Welcome to Stroke Buddies weekly Tuesday Stroke Survivor Support Group meeting. Today we're really lucky to have Sherry Mourant with us today. I'm known for my long intros, and this one is not going to help in terms of making it shorter because Sherry is just really dynamic. I've had a couple of conversations with her, and there's just so much about her and so much to find out about her that I decided maybe the best thing to do was not do a big long intro and tell you everything, but actually let her speak for herself. What a concept.
Wow.
So I will tell you that she is a stroke survivor. She had her stroke almost 9 years ago, and she is an occupational therapist. That was one thing that attracted me to her initially. And then I started watching some of her exercise videos, and I just couldn't believe that a stroke survivor was making some of those moves. And discovered she's a nutritionist and a coach and a lot of other things that I'll let her talk about. And so I wanted to invite her today. I kind of gotten onto this thing about people that we need to talk to anyway, like occupational therapists or physical therapists, neuroscientists, neurologists, doctors who've all had a stroke. And because I think they have a unique perspective, they can see it from both sides, and they can provide some valuable information. And so Sherry's willing to talk a bit about OT. And so this hour is going to fly by and we won't get to everything, but that's okay. We'll get to a lot, and I hope it does a lot of people good. And we post it on YouTube if you enjoyed this and you want to share it with somebody else at a later
What?
date. Okay, well, that was pretty brief for me. So,
Oh, yeah, that's it.
That was brief.
yeah.
Yes, it was for Ralph.
For Ralph, yes.
Okay, I let him make fun of me. Well, I shared with you and Lauren my caution, passion, and intensity warning sign, and I actually sent it out to people. I sent it out first to one of Lauren's compatriots at Med Rhythms because I said to myself, I'm going to have a Zoom call with this woman, and she has absolutely no idea what she's getting into. So I made that up and sent it to her. Anyway, I'm taking your time, and I don't want to do that. The first thing I'd like you to do is just give us, the elevator pitch version of your story, your stroke, and because I want to concentrate more on what you did after the stroke, how you recovered, how you got back to all the things that you love, and
Yeah.
how to rebuild yourself, or build yourself, invent yourself, not reinvent yourself, invent yourself.
Yeah. All right. So just to give you a little context, prior to having my stroke, I was a practicing occupational therapist. I have owned my own private occupational therapy practice in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. And I was a group fitness instructor as well, teaching 4 or 5 classes a week, running half marathons, on the go all the time, both seeing my OT clients in the community and teaching classes. In December 2012, out of nowhere, my stroke happened. It impacted the left side of my body. Initially, when I was taken to hospital, I was non-responsive, no movement on the left side of my body whatsoever. But I was lucky enough to get to the hospital in time to have TPA, which didn't completely remove the clot. But they were able to do a procedure to remove the remainder of the clot so that I was able to have a really good recovery, what I consider to be a really good recovery after my stroke.
Me too.
Yeah.
I recovered well too, but I think you had a really good recovery, because I've watched some of your exercise videos, and I also know because of my recovery that it didn't just happen to you.
Mm.
So talk a little bit about what it took mindset wise? Because I know that you're a big believer in mindset, like a lot of people who actually end up getting better, because a lot of us think it's probably the number one key to getting better. Talk a
Yeah.
little bit about how you managed to get better and deal with the things that you have to deal with as a stroke survivor and maintain a good mindset.
It was definitely helpful that I was fit before I had my stroke. So that definitely helped. But in terms of mindset, I also have a really supportive husband who is also very fit as well. So he was the one that started getting me back into the habit that I had. I would, previous to my stroke, the gym was like my second home. I was there every day. So it was him that started dragging me back out to the gym every day. Even though I couldn't do the things that I used to do before, I found that I was able to do the Stairmaster, although the arm part I could only do for brief periods of time, and my left arm would get very tired. So I would end up doing it for a couple minutes, then stopping with my left arm, continuing with my right arm and my legs, and gradually and intermittently putting the left arm back in. So my husband, was pushing me initially to get back into some of my regular daily activities. And that definitely helped to get me back into the mindset of continuing to push forward. So, and I was thinking about, okay, well, what do I want my life to look like in the future? Do I want my life to look like not having any of my old habits or routines? Do I want my life to look like staying home all day, not being able to return to my OT practice, not being able to be active? That was not the life that I envisioned for myself for the future. So having a clear vision in my head of a busy, active lifestyle was what I started working towards every day, that I was pushing myself, and with my husband's help at the beginning, to do the things that I needed to do.
Cool. And you got back to your occupational therapy practice fairly quickly, as I recall from you talking to you.
Yeah. I was off work for about 3 months. A big part of that was that I do work in community practice, which involves driving to clients' homes, and I wasn't able to drive for the first 3 months. So that was part of it, but also having the cognitive capacity and the stamina to be able to sit face to face with clients, sometimes for up to 2 hours, and to be able to process what they're telling me and think clearly and quickly when I'm directly in front of a client. I didn't have those capabilities in the first 3-4 months. So at the beginning, I was off for 3 months. When I did return back to work in month 4, it was I put myself on a graduated return to work program, because that's what I do as an OT. I design graduated return to work programs. So I put myself on one, and started working a few hours in the office to start. Not even talking to clients on the phone, just doing paperwork. And then I introduced phone calls with clients. And then once I got my license back, I introduced some shorter home visits to clients.
It's switching around. I'm going to switch back. I switched views. I shouldn't be trying to see what happens with recording in the middle of a meeting. I think rather than do it chronologically, maybe we'll stick with subjects. So let's stick with the subject of OT. You told me that the things that you learned having had your stroke fundamentally changed the way you looked at occupational therapy and the way you engaged with your patients post-stroke. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So earlier on in my career, I worked extensively with stroke survivors and people that had had other brain injuries, traumatic brain injuries, brain tumor survivors, all kinds of neurological disorders impacting the brain. And as an OT, we learned when I went to school way too many years ago to talk about that we were taking a bottom up approach. So I would, if someone had a hand that wasn't functional, I would give them a hand program, and they would be doing things, manipulating small objects and doing activities with their hands in order to improve their hand function. After my own stroke, I did that for the first little while for myself, because I still have a left hand that doesn't completely function the same as my other hand. I have some extensor and flexor issues and motor coordination issues with my hand. So I wasn't offered rehab on my hand, so I did my standard protocol that I would do with my clients. I did that on myself, and my hand did get somewhat better, but I never got the fine motor dexterity back enough to be able to write because I was born left-handed. So that got me so far, but not exactly where I wanted to be from a functional perspective. So I started doing research and investigating. I love science. I love reading research and finding out what research is going on and discovering new things. So I started doing more research and looking into other things. And one of the first books that I read when I had enough concentration to read was this book, The Brain That Changes Itself, by Norman Deutsch. And it's a comprehensive review of a lot of the research that's going on around the world when it comes to neuroplasticity, or the brain's ability to change itself and heal itself after some kind of event like a stroke. So a lot of the things that he talks about, I started talking to other occupational therapists and other people that I know that believe that in neuroplasticity. And by the way, I have found that not all occupational therapists, physiotherapists, treatment providers have a knowledge of neuroplasticity and don't integrate it into their practice. But there are a lot of valuable techniques that I have since learned through my own research, both reading and consulting with other practitioners. And I've since attended some other courses that have become available through my professional association related to neuroplasticity. And I consider myself a guinea pig in some ways. I try things out on myself and see how it works, and then start using it with my clients. And you know what? 9 times out of 10, the things that work for me work for other people. So it's changed the way I practice, in that now I tend to take much more of a top-down approach. My approach is more to work on rewiring the brain, and the hand, and whatever isn't working properly fixes itself. If you fix if you can address the rewiring of the brain, that's the approach I tend to take. I still do work on the functional aspects. If someone has an issue with their hand and they need specific things related to their hand function, I will work on those things, but in the context of rewiring the brain first.
Okay, I want everybody who's here and everybody who's listening on YouTube to notice that when Sherry comes up against something that is an issue, she doesn't look at it as a stone wall. She looks at it as a problem to be solved, something to get around. And that's a really key thing. Well, I see so many people in their recovery, they come up on something that's a problem, they don't know what to do, and they stop. And you just keep going because you understand, well, I think also that people who are physically fit and train understand the whole thing about keeping going to reach the
Mm,
goal better than people who've never trained for anything in their life. Uh,
mm,
so um, that was pretty good that that you managed to maintain that level of mindset, and I definitely agree that I don't see as near enough practitioners integrating neuroplasticity into their practice, and that's something that we actually, as a group here, would like to do something about. I've discussed it with you, but that's another subject. Uh,
mm.
I know that you were a fitness instructor prior to your stroke, and I also know a little bit about why you became a fitness instructor. So I'd like, if you're willing to share that, that would be great. And also, you had some issues around returning to fitness instructor around self-image. And I'm not trying to make you look bad here. There are a lot of people who deal with these same issues, and I'm hoping that um, they can gain something from how you managed to overcome these things. Mostly from our conversation, it sounded to me like mostly it had to do with the way you looked at them. Back to mindset again. What a concept.
Yeah. I say to my clients that I work with all the time that recovery or becoming physically fit or anything that you want to do in your life all starts with the mindset. If you believe that you can do something and you have a solid plan to get you there, begins with a positive mindset. If you think that you can't do something, guess what? You're going to fail. You won't be able to do it. So going back to your original question, so when I was previously teaching group fitness classes, I had initially started doing that because my OT practice was working with people that were already physically compromised in some way, or they had significant mental health concerns that prevented them from doing their daily activities. And as an OT, I know that exercise can be one of the best forms of medicine for either of those things. So I became a fitness instructor because I wanted to help other people in the general community become more physically and psychologically healthy. Then when I had my stroke, I was going to the gym. As I said, my husband was taking me to the gym, but the things I was able to do at the gym were very limited. And because of my motor planning issues, which I still have, the things that I did prior to my stroke, I was a Zumba instructor, for example. Zumba is a dance-based program that requires a lot of concentration, or a lot of concentration, yes, but a lot of coordination and musicality to be able to teach that program. And I found that after my stroke, both of those things I didn't have anymore. So I was thinking about this after our call yesterday, Ralph. I was thinking about being in my basement, that one of the very first things that I tried outside of the gym was a simple jumping jack. And I remember how demoralizing I felt that I couldn't coordinate my arms and legs to do a jumping jack. So I would practice it in my basement, and in my head, I was saying, I'm not going to the gym. I'm not going to try to go to a Zumba class because it'll just be too embarrassing. I used to be the person that was on the stage teaching these classes, and now I can't even do a simple jumping jack. So yeah, it was very difficult to go from being the person who would be leading others in fitness to struggling with what I thought considered basic movements.
A lot of times people get in that situation where they can't do something and it discourages them. And I think that's the time that you really need to focus on the mindset. And I'm a big believer in, I'm not a big believer in multiplying out bad form. but you can't have good form in the very beginning when you're trying to relearn something. So
Exactly.
so you have to do it on some level, and a lot of people are not willing to try that. For example, I tell people use both hands all the time in around the house. Wash the dishes,
Yeah.
vacuum. I vacuum with my affected arms still. Um, if you'd be surprised, folks out there, Sherry knows this, that if you integrate your hand into your life, assuming you've got it moving at all, I tell people that you'll see astounding changes. I tell people to do it no matter how much longer it takes, how stupid you feel, how awkward it is. Just do it, because if
Yeah.
you do it, it will get better. If you don't do it, you're never going to go back to the gym in Sherry's case, or you're never going
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
teach fitness again. So you did manage to get back to teaching fitness again, correct?
Well, in a modified way. So because I was self-conscious about going to the gym, I started looking for other avenues, other things that I could do to still improve my physical fitness, and as part of my rehab for my stroke, because I knew that I had motor coordination issues that I wanted to improve. I have a lot of instability around my left shoulder girdle that I wanted to work on. But the traditional things that I was doing at the gym were not working. So I started looking for other resources, and I found a fantastic online fitness and nutrition resource called Beachbody On Demand. And I used to, as I said, I used to teach fitness classes, and these fitness classes are top notch. And each program has a different focus. So gradually, as I started doing more and more programs, I've been able to work on different issues, motor planning, strength, coordination issues that I have had. Part of the process, I was asked by my coach to become a coach because of my story, and because I've had so much success in being able to improve those areas that were a problem for me. Part of that process of being a coach is videotaping yourself doing exercise. And as you just said, Ralph, sometimes we try to integrate using both of our hands and both of our arms when we're doing activities. But for me, I don't always have an awareness when I'm not using my left hand. So videotaping myself doing things around my gym and doing exercise is a visual cue to me, things that I still need to work on. So it's been extremely valuable process for me. And I use those videos now. Initially, I was still very self-conscious about sharing my videos with other people because my movement isn't normal. My left arm still doesn't straighten all the way. I have a partially bent elbow all the time, and I can't lift completely above my head. So I used to be self-conscious about sharing those videos, but if I can help other people by showing what I can do with my body now compared to what I couldn't do at the beginning, that's exactly why every day on my social media feeds on Instagram and Facebook, I show my workout videos and what I'm doing every day to show other people what's possible.
Well, and mentioned that Sherry's also a nutritionist, and she has something called Health and Wellness Community. And when we post this video on YouTube, I'll also put some other resources in terms of you being able to find that community if you want to join or get in touch with Sherry in any way. So I assume that. Well, it's a big issue for people, like not wanting to appear in public and stuff. I see a lot of posts on folks that say they're getting stared at the supermarket. I think some of it happens. I think you're more likely to get stared at by the 3-year-old kid that who doesn't know what's going on with you than the parents who thinking negatively about you. I think a lot of this is in people's minds. It sounded like you used your desire to want to help people to get over that trepidation in yourself.
Very much so. Initially, I didn't share the videos with anyone. They were just for myself so that I could see. As I said, I wasn't, I'm still not necessarily aware all the time when I'm not using my left hand. So the videos were extremely beneficial for me for that purpose. Even if people just throw the video, throw your cell phone camera up with the video on, place it somewhere around the room and just videotape yourself moving around, that can be an extremely valuable tool to show yourself how you are moving your body. Are you moving your affected limbs and how you're doing that?
I've done that a little bit in stroke recovery. I used to do it regularly as a video professional with people like golf swings and stuff like that. If you do
Yeah.
stroke recovery, be prepared for a few. Oh my God! Look at me! Look at my arm. I'm not moving my arm.
Yeah.
Because what's happening with this, it's a form of neglect and
Yeah.
a lack of awareness over there. I think I'm not a neurologist, but it seems like when you lose the connections to that side, you're also, in terms of movement, you're also losing the awareness to that side.
That's
And
right.
and so many people. Oh, I'm always hesitant to comment, because somebody's walking. I see somebody walking and they got their arm like this, and then I see them move it a little bit, and then it goes back to like this, so they can move it. So it's just neglect. But 87 people have already said, fantastic, even though their knees stiff and they're circumducting and everything else. So I'm real hesitant to say things like, start swinging that arm.
Yeah.
Because if they don't know me, then they're not necessarily going to see that as constructive. But that's uh, the only, maybe you have some insight on this, on how you deal with this, because you're still dealing with it to this day. I try and think, and so I started, like, I don't talk with my hands, but now sometimes when I started talking, I started using both my hands, and I have to think about it all the day. I almost had to force myself for a long time. Now it's kind of become natural. How did you deal with that, Jerry?
Well, I guess I often say I often go back to the fitness because I always say that fitness is a metaphor for life in a lot of ways. And for example, when I'm in the gym, I have a mirror on the wall in front of where I'm doing my exercise so that I can see for myself if I am moving my left arm and what that movement looks like. Not that I'm concerned all the time about the form, as you say, Ralph. Sometimes at the beginning, if you can move, do what you can do. The form's not going to be perfect all the time. But things like that. I also have integrated other reciprocal movement patterns, simple things. One of the, you talk about walking. When I first started walking outside again after my stroke, because my shoulder was sore, I walked with my hands in my pockets. Well, I now know that if you want to get as more areas of the brain firing at once, you have to, as much as possible, allow your arms to swing naturally as they would when you're walking.
Right. Opposition is important.
Yeah.
That's the way, I know you know this, Sherry, but we have people watching who don't understand a lot of these things. The reason that opposition is important to anyone here or anyone watching on YouTube is that that's the way the brain learns. We have two sides of the brain. We have two sides of the body. Everybody who's had a stroke pretty much knows that the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body and vice versa. And the back of the brain, cerebellum, brainstem, all those things are responsible for coordination, putting the two sides together. Well, there's a reason that babies crawl before they walk, because they're training themselves in opposition. So the earlier you can get some opposition going, and I know, some people have got arms that don't cooperate. but anything you can do to get that pattern going, that's the pattern, that's the way your brain learns. And to me, Sherry, maybe we can talk a little bit about this. It seems to me that when you learn about how the brain works, then you have a greater ability to maximize neuroplasticity for yourself. This is what
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's amazing how many clients that I work with as an OT who have not been provided any information or education about how the brain works and how to use that information to help heal their brain.
Well, everybody in this group has heard me say about 5 times that I've never heard a PT or an OT mention the word neuroplasticity, unless they were neurotrained. Actually, the neurotrained ones don't specifically mention it, but they start with the brain, like you and I were talking about, and you mentioned earlier, the top-down approach. They start with the brain and figure out what the person needs to do to learn to make that connection again, and they find the appropriate exercise. So I've been trying to figure out, if there's one question that would be beneficial that I could answer for stroke survivors, it seems to me would be how does neuroplasticity work, and how do you maximize it in terms of your recovery, not my recovery, not Sherry's recovery, but
That's right. Yeah.
in any situation. And that's going to take a little bit of thinking and concern and ownership of your recovery. The people that are sitting around, Sherry knows this, you got two different people, two different kinds of people that go to PT and OT, and one is the person who says, okay, I'm here, make me better. And the other person is the person who says, I'm here to get better. These are my goals. How are you going to help me? And Sherry and I talked a little bit about homework. I want you to think, because I say this all the darn time, and all these people are tired of hearing me say it. I want you to talk about homework and what you think about PTs and OTs that don't give it.
Yes. Well, I've always been a big proponent of giving homework to my clients. I always do. My clients cringe when they know the homework's coming at the end of the session. They cringe. They know the homework's coming. And so that people don't forget, I send them home with a written list, or I send them an email after the session with a list of their homework assignment for the week. I personally feel that if a treatment provider, OTs, PTs, speech language pathologists send people home without giving them homework, they're not doing their job. And sometimes it is on us as the survivor, as the person that's going through the rehab. Sometimes we, as I said before, we have to be an advocate for ourselves. And so if the therapist doesn't assign us homework, or if they don't explain or educate us to the extent that we want, we have to ask for that sometimes.
Absolutely. If I may, that's
Sure.
a very important point, Sherry. And we've talked about that before, being our own best health advocate. Guys, you got to step up and ask.
Yeah.
What can I do at home? And demand answers. We're entitled.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, we're paying for it. And if we're not getting our due, then it's up to us to ask. And it's up to us to make sure the therapists understand our goals, not their goals, our goals. What do
Absolutely.
you want?
Absolutely. And it's the same. Ralph and I were talking about this yesterday. If a therapist doesn't ask you what your goals are and what you want to work on, again, they're not doing their job.
Right. If you want to get out of that wheelchair, or you want to be able to swing a golf club, or whatever the case be, you got to tell them that.
Yeah.
They're not going to know.
No, they don't know. They don't know what your life was like before, what kind of things are important to you. What's important to one person might not be so important to someone else. I remember years ago working on the stroke unit at the hospital, one of the things that we would typically work on if someone wasn't able to dress themselves was dressing. We would go and do dressing practice with them every morning till they were able to dress themselves. Well, for some people, they don't care if they can ever dress themselves. They are more concerned about being able to engage with their grandchildren when their grandchildren come to visit.
A lot of them I found in the rehab hospital were focused on getting the hell out of there and going home. Everybody seemed to think if they went home, they were going to be better, like they were going to return to their old life, which we all know isn't true. So when somebody comes to you, Sherry, and they're motivated versus when they come to you and they say, all right, Sherry, I'm here, make me better. Talk a little bit about the difference that makes in terms of your mind. And I know you're a professional, so you're going to try and bring the other person around, but you're going to have a different initial reaction. And so talk a little bit about how you deal with the two different types, and do you respond better to somebody like me that basically drives you crazy with homework?
Oh, well, no. Well, yeah, because I know that if I give you homework, you're going to do it and you're going to come back the next week having shown improvement. So it makes my job as an OT much more interesting because I need to continually be on my toes to continue to up the game for the exercises, continue to make them slightly more difficult, to challenge you, because that's how our brain does heal itself, by giving you just the right challenge. It can't be too difficult that you're going to fail all the time, but it needs to be just difficult enough that it presses your brain to work just a little bit harder.
I appreciate that, because I've been preaching around here that if you establish that type of relationship with your therapist, that they will respond in a different way than they respond to the make me better person. And
Yeah.
that it will benefit you. So I'm always trying to find people that, not just because they agree with me, but because this is basically a fundamental principle of the way things work. It's not a matter of like agreeing with me or I'm right. Well, I am right because you're saying the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I appreciate you saying that, because I'm always looking for other voices, if you will, to, kind of reinforce these concepts with folks. So it's not always me.
Yeah. So,
Um,
so on the flip side, the person that is just wants some kind of magic pill to make them better without having to put in the effort to get there. As a therapist, I'm much less motivated to give them new things each week and to continually challenge them, because I'm not seeing them challenging themselves.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks again. And it's not I'm not dissing you for that. It's human nature. We all respond positively to the positive things that are happening around us, and if positive things aren't happening around us, then we have to, you have to have twice as much positivity if the other person doesn't, and they don't always necessarily respond. So you were talking about making, that they challenge you. Yeah, and I'm the guy that I make sure I have homework. I have the therapist demonstrate it because I learn visually.
Yeah.
I do it once, and I say, "Is this right?" And they say yes, or they say, "Well, you could do a little better with your foot like this or whatever." Okay, is this right? Yeah. When I got it, I go home and do it, and I come back and um, I always try to like knock your socks off with like, "Wow, you managed to get that much better with that in a week." Because then what you're saying, I'm playing the other role here. You're saying you respond to that because you see somebody like me, being concerned about themselves. So I think it just, completely builds from there. And I encourage everybody to have that type of relationship with their therapist. What else?
Yeah. And even if they don't come back the next week having shown a significant improvement, sometimes, like yesterday, I had a client and he was telling me about when he was doing his exercises, he came up with a way himself to modify it so that he could make it slightly more difficult for himself. I love that. I love when clients come up with their own ideas how they can tweak the activity to make it slightly more challenging.
I promise everybody I didn't give Sherry a script or anything. She keeps saying all the things that I keep.
And you know what,
preaching.
Ralph, I have to go there. This is Dennis.
Okay.
And you guys have heard me say this multiple times. I feel like Ralph, but you know, in the simplest terms, we own this. Not
Yes.
not our therapists, not our doctors. You own your recovery. It's up to you.
Absolutely.
We got to step up
Absolutely.
to the plate. We can't rely on our therapists or our doctors.
Well, you
This
can use
one,
them as tools for sure.
absolutely, but we own it.
Yeah, absolutely. Quite often I get clients say to me, I didn't want to come to today's session because I didn't want to disappoint you. I didn't do my homework. And I always say to them, look, this is not about me. I give you the tools. It's up to you to use them. This is your life. This is your rehab. It's not mine. I have my own rehab program. So it's up to you to get the outcome that you want and take responsibility for the life that you want to build for yourself.
What can I say? Everybody here knows I preached this exact same stuff. Yesterday we were talking about neuroplasticity and plateauing. It's also one of the dreaded words, plateauing, graduating, all these things are things you really don't want to hear from your therapist. But you were talking just a minute ago about how when somebody does their homework and they get better, it's up to you. You feel challenged to up the ante for them and have that kind of relationship. One of the things, so let's talk a little bit about plateauing, because I believe that plateauing comes from not challenging the brain and from the top. It's not top down, it's bottom up. If you're getting bottom up kind of therapy, then they're not thinking about plateauing you. I don't remember if it was you or if it was me. We can both take credit for it, but one of us yesterday said they plateaued you instead of
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it may have been you. I'll give you credit for it. I don't need the credit. So you got to be careful of getting plateaued by your therapist, because my understanding of neuroplasticity is that the brain gets used to anything you do. So we see a lot of people who get released from physical therapy, and they might even be smart enough to know that they should get a whole bunch of sheets and stuff to do, because it might be till January till they can get back or whatever, or they may never get back. And so they go home and they do exactly what they were doing like the last day of therapy and what it says on the sheets they got, and they do that forever. And after a couple of, hey, I see you shaking your head. I'm going to let you talk about this. So they do whatever forever, and at some point, a couple months in,
It's not challenging anymore.
and the brain stops responding. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about this and how you deal with it in terms of a concept, and then how you deal with it in your practice.
Yeah, so conceptually, one of the things that Norman Deutsch talks about he has two books, by the way, that are both very good. One of the things that really gave me hope when I read his books was that our brains can continue to change and heal themselves to the day we die. It's not a process that ends at a certain point. And as you said, if a client is seeing a plateau, it's because they haven't been presented with challenging enough tasks anymore. So the scenario like doing the same exercises for 3 or 4 months that they were given by their therapist, at some point they're not enough challenge anymore.
Do you think it requires like upping the ante and following a specific path? I've been doing this and therefore I should do that. Or I kind of tend to believe that maybe just mixing it up
Yeah,
is
yeah,
enough.
it's all completely, our bodies are very smart. Our bodies become accommodated to things very quickly. And I'll use nutrition as an example. I was following the same nutrition plan for 4 years. It worked very well for me. I had resolved a lot of gut issues that I had. I dropped 36 pounds, had way more energy than I have ever had my entire life. But in January, it didn't work for me anymore. All of a sudden, I was starting to lose my energy. It wasn't working as well. Some of my gut issues started to come back. I was developing some inflammatory issues in my gut. So I just simply had to change it up. I just tweaked a few little things and went back to where I was previous to that. And sometimes you just need to make some tweaks to change it enough that your body stays interested and your body keeps changing.
I found, that I've learned to do various things. I've done a couple of things like, well, I was practicing throwing a tennis ball with my affected arm because it's not my dominant side. And I did it at 11 years to kind of prove that neuroplasticity exists forever. Um, and I managed to double the distance I threw it. But I guarantee if I went out in the backyard right now, I might not be all the way back to where I was. But your brain also forgets things
Glasses.
that you don't practice. Um,
That's right.
so if there's some skill that you think is important in terms of the life that you want to build for yourself going forward, then it's important to um, do a maintenance level at least on some of those things. I don't know if this is scientific or not, but one of the things I always did at the gym was, well, first of all, when I went to therapy, I always tended to add whatever they said. When I got new homework, I didn't necessarily drop the old homework. I just kept adding and adding. And pretty soon, you got so many things you can hardly do them all. So what I would do is at the gym, I had a big long list. It took me 2 hours to go through it all. And if I had 45 minutes or an hour, I'd do part of it. I mixed it up. I also tried to introduce other things. I was sitting on the big rubber ball, and I got good at that. And then I realized that if I brought my feet together, that made it a lot harder. Boy, I'll tell you what, try sitting on one of those suckers with your feet next to each other instead of spread out. It's a whole
Mm,
another level of core. I know you know this, Sherry.
yes, of course.
And then, and then, you know, then you can start adding weights. And then you can slide forward and sit on your tailbone on the edge of the ball. If you're sitting on the edge of the ball with your feet together and you're moving, you're getting a whole bunch of core that you don't really realize because
Oh yeah, there is always a way that you can challenge yourself in some way with just by making small little tweaks to, it might be making a tweak to something that you're doing now, modifying it a bit, but changing it up will keep your brain changing and keep you from hitting those plateaus.
one other thing I've done, and you mentioned one of your clients, well, they actually adapted it and made it harder. Sometimes when I have a task that I can't do, I break it down. Here's an example. So, trying to work on hip strength and core strength on my core strength all the way around, but hip strength on my affected side. And I'm at physical therapy, and they have me stand on a squishy pad, and then they have me put my affected leg up on the first step, and then step up on it, and move my unaffected leg to the next step, and don't put it down. Hover it and hold it there
Yeah.
for a few seconds. Yeah, I know that probably know this. And then return it all the way back, and then step all the way down and do them. And I got to where I could put my foot up there, but I kept putting my toe down. I kept putting my toe down. I couldn't do the hover thing. And I started to think it was because I didn't have the first part down. So I actually did this in front of a physical therapist. I said, okay, hang on a sec. I want to try patterning my brain. And what I did was I stepped up with the affected, And then I went up and I touched my toe as lightly as I could. Just touch my toe, and I practiced that. Like I did it 10 times. And then I felt like I had the first part down and I wouldn't be using up so much brain to do that.
Mm.
And I turned to the physical therapist. Yeah, I know this is dangerous. Of course, last week I grabbed my toe in the yoga class on live television. I'd only done it once in my life before. So I find if you challenge yourself sometimes in recovery, you end up being able to do what you think you couldn't do. So
Yeah.
I said to him, okay, I think I'm patterned and I'm gonna try it now. And I went up, and because I wasn't thinking about the first part, I could think maybe more about my core and not doing whatever I was doing previously with my hips, and I was able to hover it, and I did 8 out of 10 of them right. And
Mm.
looked at me like, because I was trying to discuss patterning with him. When I'm 13 years out. It's hard for me to make big gains. So when I go to physical therapy, when I'm lucky enough to get assigned or asked for it, I'm usually half of why I'm going. No, 3/4 of why I'm going is to pick the person's brain to
Yeah.
say, I try this. Is that, what do you think about that? Or what kind of ideas you have for that? So I found that sometimes breaking down a task um, uh, really will help with doing it. In the beginning, I always thought it was cheating. I thought, okay, you have to do it like perfect, like right out of the box, first time. I know, Sherry,
Oh.
it's guy thinking, you know. Uh, you know, we have, we don't. I always say women have rheostats, guys have on and off switches.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of true. So I had to learn, and actually I recovered before I learned this. I learned this working with other people who weren't as gung ho as me. That sometimes it's important to break a task down.
Absolutely, absolutely. And by doing that, but when working with other people, breaking things down gives them more success. And when we have successes, then we're going to want to do it again and again and again to get better. Right. Whereas if you are trying the same task and you continue to fail and fail, you're not going to want to do that. It's a natural protective mechanism that we have.
I always tell people, and you probably do this too. You probably set small goals for them. I always tell people, who are taking responsibility for their recovery and managing their own recovery program, set small goals for yourself.
Yeah.
Um, because when you achieve them, then you feel successful, and success builds on success. And when you set too high goals and you keep jumping them up and you keep failing, you'll talk yourself out of the whole thing eventually. Um,
Yeah. And that's good advice to ask people to set small goals. But the only caution on that is some people overestimate what a small goal is. So, for example, I had a client who told me that her goal was to clean her entire house in one day. I'm like, oh, okay, hold it, hold it. Okay, I agree that cleaning your house is a good goal if that's important to you, but maybe cleaning the entire house in one day is not realistic given your energy level. So then I worked with her to break it down. Okay, so how can we break this down to make it more manageable for you? So she decided that cleaning one area at a time with the day's break in between to give herself some rest time was going to be more realistic than doing the whole entire house in one day.
right. And you and I talked about this yesterday, and I said, I see people who post like, in a like running after stroke group or something, that their goal is to run a 5K by December. And I
Mm,
always go, oh no, please don't, come up with something more realistic, because that's not realistic. If you're not walking in August, you're not going to run a 5K in December.
yeah.
Period. I don't care who you are. Um, yeah, and we all sat in a rehab hospital and said, hey, I'll be back to work in a couple of weeks. I'll just kick this thing. And we all got our butts kicked by something. like Dennis says this often, you didn't realize, a lot of people say this, it didn't realize how significant an effort is required to come back from a stroke.
That's why I do what I do. That's why in my voc rehab work that I do, I'm always developing gradual return to work plans for people, because people completely underestimate how much energy it takes to transition back to the workplace. Some in the process, I and the client sometimes figure out that they're not quite ready, and we need to gradually ramp up their daily activities at home in preparation for the gradual return to work.
Well, one of the things that people don't factor in is, they think about their ability to get out of the car and get to the desk, perform the tasks and whatever. And I am not a neurologist or a neuroscientist, but I'm here to tell you that some level of brain is used up in the day-to-day BS and stress and everything that's involved in working in a work environment. And I don't think people factor that in, that, you have to be able to have the mental capacity to have things thrown at you. Okay, we need this by 3 o'clock. Well, wait a minute, now you're overwhelming me. People a lot of stroke survivors get overwhelmed, and I tend to think that they focus on the physical aspects, like I said, of getting to the desk and typing and that kind of thing. And there's more to it than that. There's a mental aspect.
Absolutely. And a lot of people work, I do a lot of work in call center environments, for example, and people don't factor in the fact that their colleagues are all around them talking on the phone while they're trying to talk on the phone. So it's added noise in the background that their brain is processing while they are trying to talk to someone. It takes a lot more work and energy on the brain's part to do that than if you were at home doing it.
Right, and anybody who's had a stroke, I asked my neurologist this, and he said, no, that part of your brain's dead. There are other parts of your brain that are going to have to learn to do things that they aren't meant to do. Your brain's a very fascinating thing, and it can do this, but you'll be using parts of your brain that aren't normally for it. So I don't think as stroke survivors we have quite as much brain. And by that, I don't mean that can't, as smart, or that we have cognitive deficits or any, although some people do. I mean that we don't have the ability to filter out noise in a call center at the same time like we're typing. And I find that if I load up my hands and go up the steps without without a handrail or something, when I load myself up, there's a medical term for it, but I call it running out of brain. For example, I have some shake in my left hand, and I can actually pick up I did a thing where I put some knives and forks in one of my water glasses upside down on a plate, and it makes a whole racket when it's rattling. It's real great for video. And I can stop it, okay? And then if I start walking, it starts shaking again. So I can stop it again, and I can keep it stopped, but then my foot drags because I don't have enough processing power. I read an interesting article recently that said mankind, with technology and all the things that we've introduced, that we're about to push the limits of the amount of input that our brains will deal with. That's an interesting concept.
It is, yeah.
Anyway, we're getting close towards the end, and I want to make sure that anybody who's got a question has the opportunity to ask it. Sherry is an OT. Obviously, if she can't touch you or move your hand or whatever, she can't give specific advice. There are also probably licensing issues. But if anybody's got any kind of questions about how to invent yourself.
Yeah, well, I'd like to hear more about that. I noticed, Sherry, your mantra is decide, commit, success, invent yourself. My natural instincts was to say reinvent myself. So talk about your mantra, decide, commit, success, invent yourself. Can you give us the elevator pitch on that?
Well, really, as I said before, it's about always starting with the mindset element. And if you have a dream, if you have a clear vision of where you want your life to go in the future, you got to make a commitment to yourself and decide to go after it. There's a strong distinction between being interested in doing something and making a commitment. So if we make a commitment, we are deciding to go for it, and you're making the commitment to drive you to move forward, to go after what that dream or that vision that you have for yourself. And if you have the clear vision and you keep driving towards that vision or that goal, you're going to succeed. It might not be tomorrow, it might not be the next day, it might be off in the future, but you're going to succeed.
And how does that translate to invent yourself?
So in some cases, people, in a lot of cases, in fact, particularly when it comes to survivors of stroke or any health condition, we're not able to return to the exact same life that we had before. We're not able to return to the exact same activities that we enjoyed and that were a big part of our life before. So for example, as I mentioned previously, teaching fitness classes was a huge part of my life before. It would ate up a ton of my time, not only to practice what I was going to teach. You had to select the music, come up with the moves, practice the moves, and then go teach the classes. So to teach a 1 hour class would take me sometimes 36 hours to practice and come up with the program. So it was a huge part of my life. Not having the musicality and the motor planning ability to do that anymore, I had to come up with something else that was going to feed my interest in fitness and helping other people become fit. So it spurred me to take what I learned from doing home fitness programs, and it spurred me to create a vision of being a coach using those programs, those exact same programs that I use to get myself healthy and to do my own rehab, to help other people that want to do the same thing. So it's still the same. In my case, it's still the same passion for the same area of interest, but I'm doing it in a different way. So that's why I say I've reinvented, or I guess another word you could use is I reignited an interest that I had that was a huge part of my life. And took it down a slightly different road because the original road that I was on was blocked.
Back to tweaking and adapting.
Yeah.
Very important
Sherry,
skills. And I'm going to have to fess up here and take responsibility, because I'm the one who came up with invent. At first I said reinvent, and I'm the one who crossed out the re in the graphic because I thought that it might drive people towards the. I didn't like the re part because I felt that people who are like looking to return again to their old life,
right.
look at reinvent as inventing themselves back to the way they used to be. So I kind of,
So Ralph, would it be
yes.
appropriate to translate that to, and I say this so many times on the sites that people probably are blocking me, that you got to let go of the old you to find the best new you.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, this is actually the truth. I was getting ready to walk out of the rehab hospital, and I was thinking about this very thing. And I blurted it out to a nurse. I didn't even know who was at the nursing station. I was waiting for my physical therapist to come to walk out of the building. And yeah, we did walk out of the building. And I said to her, I didn't say it was in my mind. I said, it's simple. But what I said out loud was, I'm going to be the best new me I can be.
Right.
Uh, so
But to do that, you gotta let go of the old you to some extent.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can't get to the new you.
correct. And you'll see one of the things that I think is a problem is that people associate acceptance with giving up. You can accept your reality. You know, okay, you had a stroke. You have to deal with it. That's acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean, oh, I'm going to be a cripple for the rest of my life. And so many people don't seem to be able to make that distinction. If they're tired of hearing you say something, people are really tired of hearing me say that, because there is a difference. Acceptance does not mean giving up or rolling over.
No.
It means to me, it means that you've accepted what's happened and you're trying to do your best on a day-to-day basis to deal with it. And that could include serious effort, the exact opposite of giving up.
Correct.
Yeah. And sometimes we just aren't able to pursue the same kind of path that we were taking before our stroke. And you got to rediscover new things about yourself that take you down a completely new path.
Look at me. I wouldn't have told you 10 years ago I'd be here doing this. No way.
Yeah.
Uh, just it happened. It evolved. It evolved because I let it. It evolved because I'm open to things. And this isn't about me. I'm just talking about you have to let it. You have to be open to things. You have to have this mindset again, right, Jerry?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great example of exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to mindset. Being open to new things and being open to letting go of certain parts of your past in order to move forward. It is all related to mindset for sure.
I have a meme I made up. It's attributed to Harry Truman. I don't use it very often because it gets misinterpreted. It's great for political stuff, though, if you really want to get somebody buzzed up. And it says, it's what you learn after you know it all that counts. It's true. All right, well, maybe we should end this unless somebody else has got some questions. You're more than welcome to ask them. And anybody who would like to stay and have a more private discussion, I stick around till most everybody has gone. Sometimes people go right away. Sometimes they stick around and we talk about things that relate to them. So, Sherry, I just can't thank you enough. I'm so happy to have somehow, um, I'm not sure. I think maybe I let you in one of the groups. And I noticed that you were an OT. I'm just so happy that the universe made your and my paths collide, and I look forward to getting to know you more and possibly doing more together. And again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming here today and reinforcing a lot of the things that I think are true. And once again, everybody out there, no, I didn't give her a script. Maybe this is kind of like the way it works.
No, it's serendipity.